Captain Lee Taman woke up slowly in a place he had never seen before. His head hurt badly, and his uniform was torn in many places. The last thing he remembered was his spaceship breaking apart after the alien attack. Now he was lying on a cold, metal floor inside some kind of prison cell made of energy barriers. The aliens who had captured him were called Vorthak, and they looked like giant insects with hard shells covering their bodies. Their leader was Commander Hyun-dae-ho, who had been fighting wars for many years. He was covered in scars that showed how many battles he had won. Hyun-dae-ho looked at the human prisoner and thought this would be easy. Taman sat up and looked around the cell. The aliens were watching him from outside, the energy barrier. They were making clicking sounds with their mouths and pointing at him like he was some strange animal in a zoo. One of them came closer and spoke through a machine that changed his words into human language. Commander Hyun-dae-ho was very confident. He had broken many prisoners from different planets before. None of them had been able to resist his methods for long. He looked at the small human and thought this one would be even easier than the others. The human looked weak and soft compared to the strong warriors he usually fought. The alien commander activated his translation device and spoke to Taman. "You will tell us where your human fleets are hiding. You will give us your military codes and your supply routes. If you help us, we will kill you quickly. If you do not help us, you will suffer for a very long time before you die." Taman said nothing, but he touched something hanging around his neck under his torn shirt. It was a small metal tag with words written on it. The Vorthak saw the tag, but they thought it was just decoration. They did not know how to read human writing, so they ignored it. This was their first big mistake. The metal tag said Lee Taman, Republic of Korea, Marine Corps, Force, Recon. These words meant nothing to the aliens, but they should have been a warning. Force Recon Marines were not ordinary soldiers. They were special fighters, trained to work alone behind enemy lines. They knew how to survive in any situation and how to escape. From any prison, Hyun-dae-ho began asking questions about human military bases and ship movements. Taman only gave his name, rank, and service number just like his training had taught him. The alien commander used machines that caused pain, but Taman had been trained to resist torture. He stayed calm and quiet even when the pain was very bad. The aliens became frustrated because their prisoner was not acting like other prisoners usually acted. Most beings would start begging or crying after the first session of pain. But this human just looked at them with steady eyes like he was studying them instead of being afraid of them. Lieutenant Park. Ji-won was Hyun-dae-ho's assistant. She watched the interrogation sessions and noticed something strange about the human prisoner. He was too calm for someone who was supposed to be scared and desperate. Most prisoners would be shaking with fear by now. But this one seemed almost relaxed. After many hours of questioning and torture, Taman was taken back to his cell. But instead of collapsing like most prisoners would do, he sat down calmly and began to look around his prison very carefully. He was memorizing every detail of the cell and the area outside it. He was watching how the guards moved and when they changed shifts. The aliens thought they had captured just another enemy soldier who would eventually break and give them information. But they had actually captured something much more dangerous. They had captured a Force Recon Marine who was trained to turn any situation into an advantage. Even being a prisoner could be useful if you knew how to use it properly. Taman knew that his captors had made several mistakes already. They had kept him alive instead of killing him right away. They had put him in a prison that he could study and learn about, and most importantly, they had not understood what his dog tag meant. If they had known what Force Recon Marines were capable of, they might have been more careful. As the first day ended, Taman was already forming a plan. He had learned about the guard schedules, the layout of the prison area, and the way the aliens communicated with each other. His training had prepared him for exactly this type of situation. He was not just a prisoner waiting to be rescued. He was a special operations soldier gathering intelligence behind enemy lines. The Vorthak went to sleep that night, thinking they had successfully captured a human soldier who would give them valuable information soon. But they were completely wrong. They had actually given a highly trained Marine everything he needed to start planning their destruction. The dog tag around his neck was like a warning label that said danger, but the aliens could not read the warning. Commander Hyun-dae-ho felt confident about tomorrow. He was sure that another day of interrogation would break the human prisoner, but he did not know that he was dealing with someone who had been trained to resist torture and to escape from enemy prisons. The alien commander was about to learn a very hard lesson about underestimating humans. 3 days passed, and Commander Hyun-dae-ho was getting very angry with his human prisoner. Every torture method that had worked on other alien species seemed to have no effect on Lee Taemin. The human endured pain that would have killed most beings. But he still would not give any useful information about human military operations. What made the situation even more frustrating was how Taemin acted during the interrogation sessions. Instead of begging for mercy or showing fear, he would ask questions about Vorthak culture and military structure. He acted like he was having a normal conversation instead of being tortured. This confused and worried the alien commander. Taemin would say things like, "Your shell armor is very interesting. The scar patterns show you have been fighting for many decades. That means you have enough experience to know when someone will not break. So why are you still wasting time with me instead of just killing me?" His voice stayed calm even after hours of torture. These questions made Hyun-dae-ho feel uncomfortable. In all his years of breaking prisoners, no one had ever been brave enough to criticize his methods or ask him direct questions. The human seemed to view their situation as temporary, like he was just visiting the prison instead of being trapped there forever. Lieutenant Park Ji-won had been watching all the interrogation sessions, and she was getting worried. "Commander, maybe we should just kill this human and move on. He is not giving us any information, and keeping him alive is using up resources we need for our mining operation." But Hyun-dae-ho refused to give up. The alien commander had made breaking this human prisoner into a personal challenge. His pride would not let him admit defeat by simply executing someone he had not been able to break first. This was exactly what Taemin wanted. The longer the aliens kept him alive, the more time he had to gather information about them. What the Vorthak did not realize was that Taemin was using every moment of their interactions to study them. He memorized guard rotation schedules and noticed weaknesses in their security systems. Most importantly, he was learning their language by listening carefully when they spoke to each other without using the translation device. The dog tag around his neck was not just identification. It was a reminder of all the training that had prepared him for exactly this situation. Force Recon Marines were not just soldiers. They were specialists in survival, escape evasion, and reconnaissance behind enemy lines. They were taught to turn any disadvantage into an advantage by the end of the 3rd day. Taemin had gathered most of the intelligence he needed. The aliens thought they were slowly wearing down his resistance, but actually he had been collecting information about their base, their security, and their military procedures. The psychological warfare was about to shift in a direction the Vorthak never expected. Hyun-dae-ho noticed that his human prisoner seemed more relaxed each day instead of more broken. This was the opposite of what usually happened with prisoners. After 3 days of torture, most beings would be desperate and ready to tell him anything he wanted to know. But this human acted like he was getting more comfortable, not more afraid. Park Ji-won suggested using stronger torture methods, but something about the human's calm confidence made her nervous. There was something in his eyes that suggested he was not really trapped. He looked at them like he was studying specimens in a laboratory, not like someone who was helpless and afraid. The alien guards were also starting to feel uncomfortable around the human prisoner. He was too quiet and too calm. Most prisoners would be crying or screaming by now. But this one just watched everything with intelligent eyes, like he was memorizing every detail for some future purpose. Taman had learned that the Vorthak were running a mining operation on this asteroid. They had about 50 soldiers and workers here, and their security was focused on keeping workers from escaping, not on preventing a trained military specialist from breaking out. He had identified the locations of their communication systems, weapon storage, and command center. The aliens were making the mistake of thinking that all prisoners were the same. They had experience with captured workers and civilians who broke under pressure, but they had never dealt with someone who had been specifically trained to resist interrogation and to gather intelligence even while being tortured. As the third day ended, Taman was ready to move to the next phase of his plan. The psychological warfare had served its purpose. He had convinced his captors that he was just an unusually stubborn prisoner, when actually he was a Force Recon Marine who had turned his capture into a reconnaissance mission. The aliens were about to learn what that metal dog tag really meant. On the fourth day, everything changed. Commander Hyun-dae-ho had become so frustrated with his inability to break the human prisoner that he decided to try a completely different approach. Instead of just using torture, he would research these humans to understand what made them so difficult to break. This decision would soon fill him with terror. The alien commander accessed the galactic military database to learn about human warfare and military history. What he found there made his blood run cold. The files showed that humans had been fighting wars for thousands of years, wars that covered entire continents and consumed whole civilizations. Their military history was filled with violence that made even the most brutal alien species look peaceful. But it was not the scale of human warfare that frightened Hyun-dae-ho the most. It was the specific information about human military training and psychological conditioning. Humans did not just fight to win battles, they fought with an intensity and determination that seemed almost insane to other species. They never gave up even when defeat was certain. When the alien commander found the files about Force Reconnaissance Marines, he finally understood what kind of prisoner he had been trying to break. These were not regular soldiers. They were special operations, troops trained to work alone deep inside enemy territory for months at a time. They were experts at survival escape and turning any situation to their advantage, the Mao Zi database explained that Force Recon Marines were taught to resist any form of torture or interrogation. They were trained to gather intelligence even while being held prisoner. They could escape from any prison and survive in any environment. The small metal tag that Hyun-dae-ho had dismissed as decoration was actually an identification marker for one of humanity's most dangerous military specialists. Hyun-dae-ho felt sick as he read more details about Force Recon training. These humans were taught to view capture not as defeat, but as an opportunity to gather intelligence about the enemy. They were trained to study their captors and learn about enemy facilities while pretending to be helpless prisoners. Everything made sense now. The alien commander rushed back to the prison area, but he was too late to prevent what was coming. Taman looked at him through the energy barrier and smiled. "You have been researching my species," the human said calmly. "Found some interesting reading." "Material, did you?" There was no mockery in his voice. Just quiet confidence. Park. Ji-won immediately noticed the change in her commander. Hyun-dae-ho's usual swagger was completely gone. He looked like someone who had just realized he was in terrible danger. "Commander, what did you learn about the humans?" she asked. But her superior could only order increased security and full lockdown protocols. It was already too late for security measures. Taman had spent 4 days learning everything he needed to know about the alien base, their weaknesses, their schedules, and most importantly, their fears. The revelation was not just that they had captured a dangerous prisoner. The revelation was that they had given this prisoner everything he needed to destroy. Hyun-dae-ho now understood that the humans' calm behavior had not been stubbornness or bravery. It had been professional competence. Taman had been doing his job gathering intelligence and preparing for the next phase of his mission. Even as a prisoner, he had been working to complete his military objectives. The alien commander tried to convince himself that the human was still safely locked in an energy cell, but he had read enough about force recon capabilities to know that conventional prisons meant nothing to these specialists. They were trained to escape from any confinement and to use enemy facilities against their captors' park. Ji-Wan noticed that the human prisoner was looking at them differently now. There was something in his eyes that had not been there before. It was the look of someone who had finished gathering information and was ready to take action. The psychological warfare phase was over, and something much more dangerous was about to begin. The Vorthak had thought they were slowly breaking down their prisoners' resistance through torture and interrogation, but actually, they had been giving a Force Recon Marine 4 days to conduct a detailed reconnaissance of their base study, their security procedures, and identify all their weaknesses. They had been helping him prepare for what was coming next as night fell on the 4th day. Hyundae posted extra guards around the prison area and activated all security systems, but he knew from his research that these measures would not be enough. Force Recon Marines were trained to overcome any security system and to turn any environment into their personal battlefield. The aliens were about to learn why these humans were considered so dangerous. The breakout happened at exactly 3 in the morning during the night shift when the mining asteroid had only minimal security coverage. Lee Taman had spent 4 days carefully studying the guard rotation patterns, and he knew that Lieutenant Park Ji-Won would be making her security rounds alone at this precise time. This was the opportunity he had been waiting for. When Park Ji-Won approached his cell for the routine prisoner check, she found Taman lying motionless on the floor. His breathing was very shallow and irregular, and he appeared to be unconscious or possibly dying. The alien lieutenant knew she should maintain safe distance and call for backup, but her curiosity about the strange human overcame her military training. Park Ji-Won made the fatal mistake of lowering the energy barrier just enough to take medical readings and check if the prisoner was still alive. That small opening was all that Taman needed. His unconscious state had been a carefully maintained act, and his attack was faster than the alien's reflexes could handle. Within seconds, Park Ji-Won was unconscious and Taman had her access codes and weapons. The escape itself demonstrated everything that Force Recon training was designed to accomplish. Taman moved through the asteroid facility like a ghost, avoiding security patrols and sensor systems, with skills that had been drilled into him through years of special operations training. Every lesson he had learned about infiltrating enemy territory came into play: stealth movement, silent takedowns, and environmental awareness. What should have been a simple matter of keeping one prisoner locked up turned into a complete nightmare, for the Vorthak Taman did not just escape from his cell. He began systematically sabotaging their entire mining operation from the inside. Security systems started going offline. Communication networks experienced mysterious failures, and mining equipment began breaking down in ways that seemed impossible. The human was not just running away. He was conducting a one-man sabotage campaign that was designed to cripple the alien base and gather intelligence at the same time. This was exactly what Force Recon Marines were trained to do: turn enemy facilities into sources of information while destroying their operational capability. Commander Hyundae woke up to find his command center in complete chaos. Half of his staff was unconscious from encounters with the escaped prisoner. Critical computer systems were offline or malfunctioning, and there was no sign of where the human had gone. But the most frightening discovery was the message Taman had left on the main display screen. The message was written in perfect Vorthak language, showing that the human had learned to read and write their script during his 4 days of captivity. You should have read the dog tag more carefully. Force Recon Marines do not stay prisoners. We become your worst nightmare. This message made it clear that everything had been planned from the beginning. Hyun Dae-ho immediately mobilized every available soldier to search for the escaped human. But Taemin had already disappeared into the asteroid's mining tunnel system with stolen equipment and weapons. The alien commander was beginning to realize that his research into force recon capabilities had come too late to prevent disaster. The Vorthak soldiers began searching the tunnels, but they were looking for someone who did not want to be found. Taemin had 4 days of studying their base layout, and he knew the tunnel system better than most of the aliens who worked there every day. He had turned their own facility into his personal battlefield, where every advantage belonged to him. Park Ji-won recovered from her encounter with the human, but she was badly shaken by the experience. She reported that the prisoner's attack had been perfectly calculated and professionally executed. This was not the desperate action of someone trying to escape. This was the planned operation of a military specialist who had been preparing for days. The aliens were starting to understand that they had never actually been holding a prisoner. They had been providing a force recon marine with 4 days of reconnaissance, time to study their base, identify their weaknesses, and prepare for a military operation. Now that operation was beginning, and they were completely unprepared for what was coming as search teams spread throughout the asteroid facility looking for signs of the escaped human. They had no idea that he was already several steps ahead of them. Taemin was not hiding from them. He was hunting them. The prisoner had become the predator, and the Vorthak were about to learn what that meant. The asteroid mining facility descended into complete chaos as Commander Hyun Dae-ho sent every available soldier to hunt down the escaped human prisoner. But what the aliens did not understand was that the situation had completely reversed. They were no longer the hunters trying to catch escaped prey. They had become the prey being stalked by a highly trained predator Lee. Taemin had transformed the mining tunnels and maintenance shafts into his personal battlefield, where every advantage belonged to him. The confined spaces were too small for the large Vorthak soldiers to move easily, but perfectly suited for a human who had been trained in close quarters combat. His smaller size and greater flexibility gave him tactical superiority. In every encounter, the first patrol that encountered the escaped prisoner never had a chance to report what they found. Sergeant Kim Min-ho led a squad of 6 heavily armed Vorthak soldiers into the lower mining levels, expecting to find a desperate human hiding in the darkness somewhere. Instead, they walked into a carefully prepared ambush that eliminated their entire squad without a single shot being fired. Taemin had turned ordinary mining equipment into deadly improvised weapons and used the aliens' own thermal vision systems against them. He created false heat signatures to mislead their sensors while attacking from directions they never expected. The mining tunnels became a maze where death could come from anywhere, and the human predator could disappear without leaving any trace as reports of missing patrols began flooding into the command center. Hyun Dae-ho realized that his numerical advantage meant absolutely nothing in an environment where the human could strike from anywhere and vanish before reinforcements could arrive. The mining asteroid that had seemed like a perfect prison had become a 3-dimensional battlefield where every shadow could hide an enemy. Lieutenant Park Ji-won was recovering from her encounter with the human, but she was still shaken by the experience. Commander, she suggested we should abandon this facility and call for reinforcements from the fleet. We cannot fight an enemy who knows our base better than we do and can attack us whenever he chooses, but Hyun Dae-ho refused to admit defeat. We cannot run away from a single human, he declared, though his confidence was clearly shaken. The warrior who had broken countless prisoners from dozens of species was discovering that humans operated according to completely different rules. This was not just about escape or survival. What Taemin was doing went far beyond simple revenge or trying to get away from his captors. He was conducting systematic psychological warfare designed to destroy enemy morale, and operational capability. This was military doctrine in action, using fear and uncertainty as weapons, more effective than any gun or explosive device. The breaking point came when Taman infiltrated the command center itself, moving through ventilation systems that the Vorthak had assumed were too small for any intelligent being to navigate successfully. He appeared directly behind Commander Hyun-dae-ho, close enough to whisper in the alien's ear, before vanishing again into the facility's infrastructure. The whispered message was simple but absolutely terrifying. "Your move, Commander. But remember, I know this place better than you do now, and I have all the time in the galaxy to finish what you started." The human had been close enough to kill the alien commander, but had chosen to deliver a psychological message instead. What had started as a routine prisoner interrogation had become a horror story for the Vorthak garrison. They were being systematically hunted by a single human who seemed to be everywhere at once, striking without warning and disappearing before they could respond. The aliens were learning what it meant to be prey. Search teams would find evidence of the human's presence, but never the human himself. Damaged equipment, sabotaged systems, and unconscious guards marked his passage through the facility, but he remained invisible whenever they tried to track him down. It was like fighting a ghost who could affect the physical world, the Vorthak. Soldiers were becoming afraid to patrol alone and afraid to split up into small groups, but staying together in large formations made them slow and easy to avoid. The human was using their own security procedures against them, turning their strength into weakness through superior tactical knowledge. Park Ji-won realized that traditional military tactics were useless against this enemy. "We are not fighting a normal escaped prisoner," she reported to her commander. "We are fighting someone who has turned our own base into a weapon against us. He knows every tunnel, every system, every weakness that we have." As the hunt continued through the day and night cycles, the Vorthak began to understand what they were really dealing with. They had not captured an ordinary soldier and allowed him to escape. They had captured a Force Recon Marine and given him everything he needed to become their worst nightmare. The dog tag had been a warning, but they had ignored it. The aliens were beginning to realize that this situation was not going to end with them recapturing their escaped prisoner. It was going to end with them learning a lesson about human military capabilities that they would never forget. Those who survived would carry the memory of what one Force Recon Marine could accomplish when properly motivated. The end came with a demonstration of human military philosophy and capability that the Vorthak Empire would never forget. Instead of simply escaping from the asteroid facility or killing everyone inside it, Lee Taman chose to deliver a lesson that would echo throughout alien space for generations to come. He had spent days gathering intelligence about their entire operation, and now he was ready to use that information in a single coordinated strike that showed the true capabilities of Force Recon training. Taman simultaneously disabled the asteroid's life support systems, uploaded computer virus programs into their communication networks, and triggered controlled explosions that destroyed all the mining equipment while leaving the main facility structure intact. The Vorthak had only minutes to reach emergency evacuation pods, but the physical damage was not the most devastating blow he delivered. The truly destructive attack was informational. Every piece of intelligence about Vorthak military operations, base locations, supply routes, and strategic planning that Taman had observed or extracted during his captivity was being transmitted to Human Fleet Command through hijacked alien communication systems. The raid that had captured one human prisoner had just compromised the military security of an entire sector. Hyun-dae-ho watched in complete horror as classified information streamed out of his facility, knowing that he had handed the humans an intelligence victory that would take decades for his empire to overcome. As the emergency evacuation began, Lieutenant Park Ji-won made one final desperate attempt to capture the human before escaping. She led an armed assault team to what their sensors indicated was his last known position. Instead of finding Taman, they discovered another message and a small pile of equipment. The equipment included his torn military uniform, his combat boots, and most significantly, his dog tag. The message was written in perfect Vorthak script, demonstrating that he had completely mastered their language during his brief captivity. Tell your superiors that you captured Lee Taman Republic of Korea Marine Corps Force Reconnaissance. That should have been enough warning. The final evacuation pod launched just as the life support systems failed completely. Commander Hyun Dae-ho and his surviving crew members watched from space as their mining operation became a lifeless hulk drifting in the asteroid belt. Emergency scans showed no life signs anywhere in the facility, and no escape pods had been launched. It appeared that the human had chosen to die rather than be recaptured, taking the entire alien operation with him in a final act of defiance. The Vorthak survivors reported that Taman had sacrificed his own life to complete his mission and deliver maximum damage to enemy operations. This report spread throughout their military command structure, but 3 days later, human naval forces arrived to investigate the automated distress signals from the abandoned facility. They found the asteroid intact but empty, with all critical systems carefully sabotaged and massive amounts of alien intelligence data ready for collection in the main computer systems. More importantly, they found Captain Lee Taman alive and in perfect health in an improvised survival shelter he had constructed in the deepest mining shafts. He had used stolen alien technology to create his own life support system and had been waiting patiently for human forces to arrive and extract him from enemy territory. The rescue team asked him how he had managed to survive alone for days in a facility with no life support systems. Taman's response became legendary throughout the human fleet and was repeated in military academies for years afterward. I am Force Recon. We do not die easily, and we never quit. The dog tag around his neck had been left behind as a calling card and a warning to any aliens who might encounter it in the future. But the man himself had done exactly what Force Recon Marines are trained to do: adapt to any situation, survive against impossible odds, and complete the mission regardless of personal cost. The Vorthak Empire learned a permanent lesson that day about the dangers of underestimating human military capabilities. Word spread throughout the galaxy about the species that could turn capture into victory and transform prisoners into nightmares. They had made the mistake of not reading the dog tag carefully enough, and that oversight had cost them far more than they ever imagined possible. News of the incident reached every major alien civilization in the sector and became a cautionary tale about human military doctrine. The small, metal identification tag that the Vorthak had dismissed as meaningless decoration became a symbol that other species learned to recognize and fear whenever they encountered human military personnel. The story of what one Force Recon Marine had accomplished while held prisoner became part of human military legend and alien folklore. It demonstrated that humans possessed capabilities that other species found difficult to understand or counter. The psychological impact of the incident lasted far longer than the immediate military and intelligence victories. From that day forward, when alien military forces encountered humans wearing dog tags, they remembered the lesson learned at the mining asteroid. They had discovered that capturing a human soldier might seem like a victory, but it could easily become the beginning of their own defeat. The tags were not just identification, they were warnings that should never be ignored.